goals, dreams and goals, dreams and goals. Get results.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Dustin Gutkowski here with the DG Show, and have a friend and someone I love doing things with. No Diddy. We're gonna get the tea with DG with my man Oren Hodak from KO Reps, and why it's fun to do stuff with Oren No Diddy is that he manages a bunch of fighters, which I can't imagine the stress levels, because you're negotiating for people and with people that can literally beat you and I up probably together. Yeah. And so you have to be very methodical on what you say, how you say it, right? They fight for a living, but you've been in this game a while, man. And so that's a tough industry to be in. And so we're just going to get some of the details too of, like, for everybody out there, man, like, you want to be a sports manager, right? You're kind of mainly in fighting, right? You're in,
it's definitely the bread and butter. There's dip a little bit into the baseball world and the football world, but I'd say 90-95% of my day-to-day in my business is definitely in the mixed martial arts UFC world.
How does someone go from being a stud red shirt golfer at Indiana to managing fighters? We got to know the Hoosiers. Take us back. You're from Dallas, and now you own KO Reps. You go on a golf scholarship.
Yep. Yeah. So if you want to go all the way back, I could.
We do. We want to go way back.
I can make it quite an interesting story.
Way back Wednesdays, baby.
Deal.
Let's do this.
So we'll go even farther back, since we're talking a little bit of golf. We'll go even farther back. So when I wasn't even 15 years old, probably maybe a little bit before that. My dad was like on a jog. We were at the track at the junior high near my house, and in the mud of the track, because it rained the day before, there was a golf club, and it was like a 9-iron. So for whatever reason, I grabbed that club, took it home, found some golf balls somehow, kind of started chipping around in the backyard. Then one of my buddies, his dad had a membership at a country club, called me to go play. First hole, I go out there, and I'm just taking chunks, not even hitting the ball. And then finally the dad's like looking at me, and he's like, just stop. So we pick it up. We go to the middle of the fairway. I hit a couple balls, hit it decent. We go to the second hole, par 3, over water. I end up hitting it like 3 feet from the hole and end up getting a birdie on the second hole I ever played. Now remember, on the first tee box, I couldn't even barely hit the ball. Yeah, I was taking out chunks. But then fast forward a couple of years, I try out for the high school golf team. I had the lowest score. The coach told me, "Oh, you'll be on varsity." So I started getting, a little bit more and more into golf, because I used to be big time basketball and tennis. I was actually a killer at tennis. But anyways, dropped tennis. I won district as a freshman. I came home and I told my mom and my dad, I said I retire while I'm on top. And they wanted to kill me. They were like,
high school superstar, retires young.
They were like, who says this? Yeah. But I was just getting burnt out at tennis. And I guess, I was getting pretty good at golf. And so I just kept doing that. And eventually I got some eyes on me, did good in summer tournaments in the Texas scene, and then earned a partial scholarship to Indiana. That was the business school and the golf team. That was the best fit. So that's how I decided to end up going over there. And then I did end up getting a master's degree in sports marketing and management.
Oh, wow.
I always thought I wanted to work in the front office of an NBA team, because I was a big basketball guy. Even though golf was my best and I probably should have never gave it up tennis, basketball was my favorite. But, you look around and, you're short, white, and Jewish. You're probably not going anywhere in the basketball world.
Yeah, probably not. Besides the front office. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But then so along the way in college, I interned for the Mavericks in the ticket sales department. And it was a pretty good experience, because it was cool. On our lunch break, we went and played basketball for about an hour and a half.
On the court?
Yeah, because in the summer there wasn't a ton going on. But I quickly learned that I never wanted to be in ticket sales, because that's just cold calling, selling individual games, 10-game packages. Obviously, as an intern, I wasn't getting into season ticket deals, but I was just teeing up the buyers. And then after college, I came back, started working at Hank Haney's Golf Ranch, because I didn't want to get a real job yet. And after about 9 months of that, I got sick of being in the sun and getting a little bit burned out of golf. So I went and got a real job. I ended up getting a job at a sports marketing company that was in Addison. And at the time, they were just doing speaking engagements and guest appearances for NFL and NBA players. And then a couple months after I was there, they started a fight league. And I knew nothing about MMA. I didn't even know UFC. I didn't know who Chuck Liddell or Tito Ortiz were. but they're like, hey, we're going to do this league. We want you selling sponsorships. So we had about 4 or 5 sales guys. Turned out I was the only one that got any deals worth a damn done. So they ended up getting rid of all those other guys, kept me, and then they added up some additional responsibilities. And along the way, I started meeting a couple of fighters. Like the first guy I ever worked with was actually Pete Spratt. And the fight league was called Art of War. And they did a couple of events here at the American Airlines Center in Dallas. They did some in Austin, and then eventually like Biloxi, Mississippi, a number of locations. But
Just a random place to go. Hey,
Yeah.
we're gonna go
Well,
to Austin,
casino.
Dallas. Yeah, it's Mississippi.
But it was interesting. It was a fun ride, and along the way, I started meeting some fighters, and I thought I was just connecting the dots, helping my sponsors that were a part of the event. So one of the first solid deals that I ended up getting was actually with Vitamin Water when they first burst onto the scene. So I just had a list of fighters, and I contacted Pete because I guess he had a little bit of a name, a little bit of a following compared to some of the other guys on the card. And I was like, hey, I have this clothing company. I have Vitamin Water. They're looking to partner with a fighter for the event. Are you open? He said, sure. So I worked out a couple of tiny deals with him. Then didn't charge him anything. Again, I'm a year out of college. I kind of don't even know what I'm doing, really.
Yeah.
So he calls me a couple months later, and he's like, hey, I'm fighting again. Can you get me those sponsors? And so now I'm kind of starting to realize, I'm like, well, yeah, I can get you those deals, but when I do a deal for this company, I get a percentage. So if I'm doing a deal for you, you got to give me 10%. And he was like, that's cool. And then another month goes by, and he calls me again. Hey, I have a friend, Aaron Rosa. He's fighting on Strike Force on Showtime.
Yeah, way back, Strike Force. Wow.
And so I'm like, yeah, but tell him I charge 15% because 10% is like nothing. And he's like, no, that's fine. And then, same thing. It kind of snowballs. And I say to him, like, don't you guys have a manager or an agent that's helping you out? And he's like, yeah, we do, but he really doesn't do anything. And then one sponsor connects me with a gym in New York. It just so happened there's a couple of UFC fighters there, a couple of up-and-comers. And then, one fighter connects me to another, and I meet some other fighters through the fight league. And then over time, it kept snowballing, and more fighters would contact me, and deals went from $500 and $1,000 to some $5,000 deals, some year-long deals. And eventually, I started KO Reps, but it was kind of on the side, and I was simply hustling marketing deals for the fighters. But then as I realized that there were a lot of trainers calling themselves managers and not negotiating much terms, so at some point I finally said to the fighter, I'm like, hey, if you want my sponsors, you got to come with me for full management. Like, I'll start negotiating your actual fight contract. I'll help you out on the social media. We'll set up photo shoots. We'll do this PR, that PR. And it turned into a business, and overall I've been rolling like exactly 15 years on the dot now.
Holy shit, 15 years. Okay,
Yeah.
congrats.
So I think since, at least that's what LinkedIn tells me. Since 09
Yeah.
since
Sounds good.
09
Yeah.
is when I threw it on LinkedIn.
That's when you change your bio to hashtag entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So you manage some pretty big names, right? UFC, boxing, whatever, MMA in general. Who are some of the big names that you manage?
Yeah, we have a pretty good crew. So I'd say some of the top dogs would be Kevin Holland, Renato Moicano.
Moicano want money.
Yeah,
Dude,
big money.
Dude, he's a showman, bro. Please save Moicano at all costs.
Entertainer.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a couple interesting things working for him. But then also Aljamain Sterling held the belt for a while. And then the next up in his division, Merab Dvalishvili, hopefully should be a champ by the end of the year. Worst case scenario, he's at least getting the opportunity to fight Sugar Sean O'Malley, who's obviously a popular guy. Erin Blanchfield's a young one. ESPN had an article, top 25 fighters under 25 years old, and she was ranked number 1.
Wow.
And the year prior, she was actually number 2. So now she's making waves. I mean, she's 24 years old now, just growing every fight. So it'll be interesting to see where she gets to in her career in general. And within the next year, I think that she's going to have a good chance for gold.
That's awesome. How is it though dealing? So like when there's 2 negotiations. So you're negotiating with the fighters, really, because they've got to take the deal, and you're negotiating with the UFC. Who are you mainly dealing with in the UFC? It's different per weight class, right? Or matchmakers?
Yeah. So they have 2 main matchmakers. There is Mick Maynard. He does all the females, and then 185 and up, and he also does the male flyweights, 125. Okay. And then Sean Shelby does everything in between, which is basically 135, 145, 150, and 170 males.
Wow.
Now, in those divisions, there's way more quantity of fighters. So that's why it kind of seems like Sean might have less divisions, but there's a lot more fights
fighters
on that. Yeah.
So when you get a contract, like let's just say, hypothetically, I'm a UFC up-and-comer, and I get my contract. Is it like a per fight? Is it one fight? Is it like a deal? So let's just use an example. How is that negotiated? And do you negotiate like per fight basis? So if I go out there and get a fight deal, say, is it like a 3-fight deal? Or
yeah, so normally it's 4-fight deals.
Okay.
Sometimes it'll be a little bit more depending on the circumstances. Very rare that it would be less, but we'll come up with a 4-fight promotional agreement with the organization, whether it be UFC, PFL, Bellator, even if you go to like the LFA and Cage Furies of the world that are on Fight Pass on the regional scene. But that's not to say that you can't tear up that deal at any moment and get a new contract. Or sometimes under unique circumstances, we could say, hey, yeah, we will take that fight on April 31st, but for this one, we need X, Y, and Z. And sometimes that might be money. Sometimes it might be different incidentals. Sometimes it might be, it's small and it's separate, but it could be appearance opportunities, could be tickets, could be hotel rooms, flights, a little bit of a guarantee on the next one, which you can't really put anything in writing in regards to, if you do this, then we'll give you this on the next fight. But the UFC for the most part's pretty good on that. But it's also when you come with those different requests or elements, is doing it at the right time, not always asking for something that's just not reasonable. And when we are asking, I'm not asking for $1 million when I know I'm going to accept $500,000. Yeah. Now that could be, some agents do play that game. They start wild high and just to come to some agreement somewhere. But when I shoot, and I think this is why I have a good relationship with the UFC and the matchmakers and other promotions, is because they know I'm not playing games. And when I tell them, hey, my number's 750,000, or my number's, maybe it's even a smaller 25,000, they know that really is a number that I'm not saying 25,000 just to get to 10,000 and call it a day. Like, I'm saying the number, and my feet are pretty set in the sand, but I also feel confident that I have some firepower behind those numbers as to why I'm asking for it. I don't just come up with random stuff and shoot. There's no, one fighter one time said, well, we're going to go barge into Dana White's office and we're going to ask for XYZ.
Yeah, good luck.
And I was like, that sounds great, but there's a couple issues here. Like, what are our talking points? Why do we deserve that money? And what if he's not there when we randomly fly out there tomorrow?
Yeah.
Like the rational thinking. So that's, look, athletes are, slightly different breed to begin with. Obviously, they're most of them, not all of them, but they're all special in their sport.
They're
obviously.
super special, and they're top of the class. They're on another level of fucking 99% of humans.
Yeah, but are they? And some of them could be on a level in the boardroom or in the business sense and all that. I'm not saying that none of them can be, but the reality is that you and I and a handful of others, we're professionals, we're top dogs, we're champions in the boardroom or in business or thinking long term. What's the play? Like, yeah, there's a lot of short-sighted thinking in the MMA space, and that's why I think a lot of the fighters, should get managers and get the right manager that are thinking more than, hey, what can we make in this one fight? Or as the manager, it shouldn't be, what's the percentage that this guy is going to make? It's like, sometimes I'll even forego a percentage in the short term because I'm like, look, I need you to see the big picture. Like, even on my end, I don't care about the money. Like, just trust me. I think this is the angle, the route that we should go.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the fighter signs the contract. On my end, I'm simply teeing up the ideas, opportunities, or, here's route 1 that we can go, and here's route 2. And sometimes I won't even tell the fighter my opinion first. I want to hear their thoughts because I don't want them to hear from me and then be pushed towards what I'm thinking.
Yeah, what you're thinking.
I want to tee up the different options, and I'm not even talking about opponents. I'm talking business because opponents isn't my lane. But I tee up the different business opportunities. I hear their thoughts, and then I tell them, this is why I think this is the route to go. But at the end of the day, it's a discussion, and they sign the contract. I tee up the opportunity. Sometimes they don't always agree. Now, there's been times where they didn't agree, and they look back and it's like, crap, we should have listened to that. And there's been, the other way around where it's like, hey, you rolled the dice and it did play out. Now, I like to err on the side of caution and let's get, X, Y, and Z or this dollar guaranteed ahead of time. Sometimes guys, they literally want to bet on themselves.
And that's, I was going to say, how many, so do you think, obviously I have a close relationship with a lot of your fighters in the league, and it's, when you talk to them, it's like, they're super special at what they do, like the best in the world, right? Like it's on another level. And I don't understand that world because I don't know what it's like to get into, it's the man in the arena. Like it's one-on-one, but you're literally fighting for your life. I don't think people understand that. Like, do you think some of the short-sighted thinking is because of the risk? Like you ever put your, like you think it because, it's like, I got to get this now because, man, one fight, one gruesome injury, one wrong move, one punch can change the whole course of life. So the short side thinking could be like, oh man, if I get punched the wrong way, man, like this career's over with. And this is how I make my living. And I've trained this way some of these 10, 15, 20 years. Yeah. Do you think some of that short side thinking comes from that? Like,
yeah, part of it for sure. I mean, look, you're getting punched in the face for a living.
Yeah.
And, even if, a small thing, you break your hand in a fight, and that could put you out 6 to 12 months.
You can't work.
Or, just certain circumstances. I mean, it's, these guys, they literally get you only, I mean, obviously there's other opportunities outside of the cage on marketing and sponsorship, but these aren't like monthly stipends that these guys are getting paid. It's, you're getting paid X to show and X win bonus usually. Now, sometimes there's flat rates. That's more so a boxing thing, and there are a handful of UFC fighters that have that, but 85-90% of the fighters are show and win type breakdown.
So they're really an entrepreneur. Like a fighter is an entrepreneur because he's going to have, I mean, you're obviously looking out, and I'll go into this about how you have to, let's just use the UFC because they're the Attaboys, but these fighters are entrepreneurs for out there. So they typically, and let's just use a number. If I'm a fighter and let's just say I'm going to get 3 fights in a year, my show might be 50 grand per fight. So if I fight three times in a year, if I actually show up, I get 50 grand. And then if I win, I get a separate. So, but all that money doesn't go to them. Obviously they pay a manager fee, right? They have to pay their coaches. Is that, it comes directly out and their coaches most of the time as well?
Yeah, that's after the fact, but it's, like it's performance based.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in other jobs, you're an employee at a company, whether you be, the male guy or if you're the VP, mostly every year you're having a review and we're looking at what you did or didn't do and deciding what you're going to make. Now, these guys, we're going to go back and look, oh, you fought 2-3 times this year. And yeah, you had 2 of them were finishes and the other one was a close decision. So you, in that moment, you're going to have a little bit more firepower and leverage. But yeah, when you're doubling your money based off 100% that night of how you
wow.
Did you come with the right game plan? Did you have a good weight cut? Did you even, small element of it, did you bring the right people around you for fight week to prep you in that last moment? Did you get good coaching in between rounds? You get 60 seconds in between rounds. You can't just be bringing, your homies or, whoever to the corner. I mean, that's impactful because sometimes it's almost like you have to have somebody handling that controller in the corner. Yeah, you got all the tools to throw the hook, the jab, the takedown, to do this and do that. But sometimes it helps to have somebody that's seeing it from a different angle or has that expertise to bark out those instructions in the things that you don't see. Just kind of like, on my end, maybe I'm barking out the business instructions on, hey, let's cut this video, in hopes to get, all these different websites to post about us and get your name out there. And then after we do that, we can go and show that video to XYZ company and, and see what we can turn that into for dollars outside of the cage. Just
because you have to me, UFC is the there you get the attaboys because the exposure, right? We were just talking about this week was, Nate Diaz. Like I look at Nate Diaz as a huge draw at the UFC. Like the guy, it's not like he's incredible at what he does, but it's not like he's not contending for the titles. He's not like that undefeated, but he's freaking sells out arenas and
it moves the needle. And that's what it is these days. Is it's entertainment business first, and it's a sport second.
Well, and you look at, I didn't even realize that he had a press conference fighting Jorge Masvidal. So two actual superstars in the UFC. Like these guys are up there as far as star power. And I saw today on YouTube that they had a press conference for their boxing match, and I was baffled. And I think another part that people don't realize, especially if you're a fighter, you got to capitalize on what the UFC does, piggyback off what they do, because they throw so much marketing, advertise it off it, and they blow you up. So when you have a fight, you do have to cut those promos, posts, because if you get articles that pick you up, you get magazines that pick you up, you get other podcasts picking you up, like those things sell fights. And if you sell fights, you're giving that UFC that attaboy. You're piggybacking off their advertisement. People know you, then people want to do business with you. And I think it blows it up. Like the fact that I'm like, wow, man, two of these guys were like superstars. And if they were fighting, like I remember when they fought in the UFC, that was like such a huge deal. Like you couldn't go anywhere without seeing it. And then this boxing match, I was like, wait, what? I didn't even know. I knew they were fighting, but I didn't know they were at a press conference. And I'm like, because the promotion they're using is putting no advertising behind it.
Yeah, they're trying to do a little bit of a press tour, but it's just not moving the needle as much as the UFC does. You know, they're like the 800-pound gorilla in the room that just, they move, everybody sees it, or they make a major announcement, everybody's picking it up. But you have to capitalize on those key moments, whether it be right after a fight. You need to be making some social media posts on your page so you can kind of catch that IG algorithm and get more views. And in general, people just saw, example, Renato Moicano fight. You have an epic post-fight interview.
He's had two of the best ever, by the way. Yeah.
He's had a couple of amazing moments on the mic. But again, people are going to be coming to your page, so keep it active, because right in that moment, right after the fight or fight week, you're getting all these views. Even before a great moment like that, people are probably looking at the fight card and they're like, oh, let me see what's Renato Moicano up to, what's he saying? And so it needs to be pre-fight interviews, especially if you have a great moment like that, post-fight interviews. And if a door gets opened where you have another industry or another angle to create a name for yourself, like Moicano talking about money, talking about the government and this and that. So just recently we teed up a couple of interviews with Fox News and Fox Business.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And then, luckily, he's talking about money and investments. So I sent a clip of that to Coinbase and they responded. They're interested in talking about a deal with him. Now it's early stages,
but it's the possibility.
Who knows if it'll get done, but he opened that door in that moment. And now we're trying to really like push through and let's turn that door into, a mansion. Maybe let's see what avenues he could go. Maybe there's an angle there for him to be maybe not a financial advisor, but obviously a key promoter.
He'd be a promoter.
For somebody of, talking about different financial opportunities, different crypto opportunities.
Yeah. And also too, I think like one of the reasons I love the game and I see the up and coming guys is, and you can probably attest to this, the sponsorships are so important because one, these guys aren't getting paid until they show. So we just talked about it. Let's say a fighter's getting $50,000 to show. Well, let's say 3 fights a year, or even 2, they're getting a possibility of $100,000, $150,000. But a lot of these guys have to work full-time jobs, man, or work other jobs to train. And so as a person out there, if you're a fan, like, oh, the guy's gassed or he should have been winded, like, man, put your money where your mouth is as a sponsor and sponsor these guys, because the sponsorships are what keep them out of the day-to-day work so they can work on their craft. Because you don't realize until these guys become superstars, they're probably not making enough money to live on and train full-time. They're having to work other jobs. So as a manager, how important is that for you? Because you have to take that in consideration, right? Like you take like this guy can't train full-time or this guy can't do that. And so, they might not be, you might not get Coinbase when you start out. Yeah. But man, like as a sponsor, if you're a local guy out here, if you own a local bar, a local restaurant, reach out to a guy like Oren, because that $500 you throw to a up and coming fighter could literally make or break his next fight, because it gives him the opportunity to maybe train a couple days extra a week because he's living on that money, right? How important is that for you, especially for the up and coming guys?
Yeah, it's crucial, and there's a couple different ways that I want to talk about this. Is obviously you have to maximize your earning potential when you're getting punched in the face for a living. But and then you said this earlier also, if you're an intro UFC fighter and you're getting 10,000 to show, 10,000 to win, that actually is pretty rough, because you think, oh, it made it to the UFC, but still, you fight 3 times in that year, you add that up, it's a survivable number. But then, as you mentioned, you probably got to pay a manager, you have to pay a trainer, You're going to eat clean. You're not just, you're not eating cheaps. You're eating good stuff. You're going to have supplements. You might have to travel a little bit for your training. You're going to get taxed on that money. A lot of these guys need to, get in line and actually do their taxes on time, or the younger fighters, this is their first time making enough that they really have to be reporting and paying.
Yeah.
So that stuff adds up, and then that's where, I'll come into play on getting those different marketing opportunities, those sponsorships. So, if you go even a step further backwards, like before you even make it to the UFC. So on the regional scene, sometimes the pay can be $2,000 to show and $2,000 to win.
It's crazy.
So obviously, even then, maybe you're fighting 3 to 5 times a year.
Yeah.
5 is pretty active even on the regional scene, but you add all that up, that's still peanuts.
Yeah.
But that guy that's getting 2 to show, 2 to win type of guy, I can usually hit their show money, their show and their win money. I can do that in sponsorships for them, because
that's a game changer.
Yeah, if they're fighting on TV, there's no reason that I shouldn't be able to get a handful of sponsors. 4 sponsors at $1,000 a pop is $4,000, and that helps him survive, him or her survive before the fight or leading up to it. So usually what I'll do is I'll actually because I know that I'm going to go out and hustle these sponsors, that I'm going to find them. So sometimes I'll prepay either that full amount or half of that amount, just so the fighter can kind of be at ease, and they probably should still be working when they're at that level, another job, but I'll prepay them at least half the money, so maybe they can take less hours and focus a little bit more on the fight. Or especially when we get close to the fight, it's like, hey, the week before the fight, you're taking off of work. If you're worried about money, here you go. Here's X amount of dollars, and I know, it's going to take me 30 days after the fight to invoice the companies and collect the money, but if I can help you put you in a position to focus on the fight and to give you, that small percentage better chance of focus and just being locked in and not have these other distractions, obviously that's going to get us towards our end goal.
Yeah, it's huge, because and for people, it's like, hey, if you want to help someone, especially too, I get it. You're probably not going to be able to sponsor a Marab or a Kevin Holland or, Aljo. Those guys are superstars, and when you get up to that level, it's going to be more expensive, right? But but you could sponsor, local scene guys, or if you're a big business, you sponsor a Meccano, a Coinbase. How difficult is it for you? Okay, I feel like, and I don't know if this is a manager's call. Let's say you're watching whatever, and fighter pulls out, right? Yep. So you see a big fight, right? Let's use an example of, I thought this was crazy, so I got to be a part of this, and it was just surreal for me. Obviously, I'm close to Kevin, so I'm a homer, right? I think Kevin could beat anyone up, but I also have a lot of respect for him, because I see a lot of people try to take advantage of him, and I think it's difficult because you watch these people get into the UFC, and they, even like you said, they see somebody make their UFC debut, they think they're rich, they think
think you made it, but it's
tough.
Think you go to that UFC debut and you lose. I mean, you took the fight on short notice, and again, the industry standard is the UFC or whatever league pays for you +1 to fly out.
Yeah, so you fly out.
How many fighters do you see rolling out there with one corner?
No, they have 3 at the same.
Yeah, so you have to pay out of your pocket to fly another cornerman out there. That's just another. Yeah, you lose that UFC debut. You might be coming home with $5-6 grand.
Yeah, and we heard from Marab, he lost his first 2, and he was just devastated. And you see these people try to take advantage of it, but you see a fighter pull out. All right, so you're watching.
Yep.
Big fight pulls out. It's a decent card. You manage. You got guys like Terrence McKinney. You got guys like Kevin. You got guys like Renato. These dudes are gamers. That's what I think too. Marab, I was these dudes will step up in short notice fights. Give me the fight. But where do you as a manager also have to step in and say this could be good or it could be bad? And is that your call, or do you typically wait for the UFC to come to you? So do you say, hey man, you see this fighter pull out, you're like, man, this could be a good fight for Kev. Do you typically get on the horn with UFC or the fighter first, or do you kind of wait for the UFC to come to you?
Both ways, So if I hear something, whether it be through a media friend or sometimes even training partners or just whatever source that it comes through, having the ear to the ground. I hear about Joe Blow is open at 170 pounds next week or in 2 weeks. I'll go, and if I think it makes business sense, then I'll go and I'll contact the trainer and the fighter. And I'll say, hey, there's an opening against Joe Blow in 2 weeks. Is this a good style matchup for us? What do you guys think? And then if they're on board with it, or if they're like, yeah, we love it, yeah, we're in shape, then I'll call the UFC and I'll be like, hey, we're raising our hand. You got a problem, I got a solution. Now in a situation like that, my solution just became a little bit more valuable.
Yeah.
Especially because I'm calling up and offering my services. So again, it depends which elements are happening and all the moving parts. But in a situation like that, you have a lot of leverage, and maybe you can get some different incidentals on the contract, or some dollar opportunity, or just a new. We'll say, hey, we'll take this fight, and yeah, we did have 2-3 fights left on our current promotional deal, but let's rip up that deal, give us a new 4-fight deal for XYZ dollars. And if it's reasonable, the UFC will play ball.
Yeah. How do you guys step in? Because I think it'd be difficult as a manager. Part of your job is to protect their health.
Yep.
Part of them is protect their value as a winning. It cures everything, right?
Yeah.
But then part of you is you got to get them paid, right?
Yeah.
So there ever been situations where it comes up and you're like, man, this fight's not a good fight for us.
Yeah.
It's a terrible fight, but the UFC is willing to maybe overpay. Does that come up, and where do you
100%.
Where does your mind go there? Like, okay, I can get my fighter paid, but I'm putting him at risk, and where do you put the value on that more?
Yeah, I have 2 good examples of that, and I won't name the particular fighters, but on a high level, one time the UFC contacted me and they want us to fight a surging up and comer, and and we had just fought, and my fighter even had a little minor injury, and the UFC knew about that also. But they were contacting us. They wanted us to fight in like 4 or 5 weeks, and this guy was high risk, low reward. Now, I do feel we would win, but business sense, it didn't make sense to give this other guy the opportunity. And we just fought and we won, where our momentum's moving up. And they started throwing some decent money at us. At first, it was just like, oh, we'll give you your show and your win guaranteed plus a little bit more. And then, the fighter, and mostly I didn't like it because the fighter had that small injury. Because I was like, well, in this division, like there's a little bit of other moving parts. This could kind of just be a payday and buy you time. And we did even look at it the other way. Like, even if you did lose, I don't think this is going to set you back too far. I think you could go get one more and be right back in the similar situation that you were, just because of a standstill in the division towards the top. And I even said to the fighter, I was like, man, I don't know if we could get there, but if we could get to $500,000 guaranteed, I was like, I think you take it, because like I said a second ago, it's a business first and a sport second. And if we can get to that type of money for this fight and you're healthy enough, I was like, I think we should do it. Now, the fighter wasn't healthy enough, and ultimately even ended up, we went to see a doctor first. So we were leaning towards no anyways, but then when he went and saw a doctor, he ended up needing surgery. So we didn't pull the trigger on that. But that's one example on a high level. And then on a early level, I had a guy that took a short notice UFC debut. It was a really good fight. It was entertaining. He lost a decision. And then, all the media had good thoughts about him. The UFC already said, you're going to get another fight. Don't worry. We appreciate you doing that, blah, blah, blah. They call us up, whatever it might be, a month, 2 months later. And they're like, hey, we want you to fight. And I think it was in like 3-4 weeks. Maybe let's even call it 4 weeks to be fair. But they wanted my guy to fight in Denver, which has altitude, versus a guy that's from Denver. And on top of that, the opponent was a wrestler. And my guy's not a wrestler. Now, my fighter, since he just fought for ballpark 10-10 in his UFC debut, call it 2 months prior, he's thirsty for that next paycheck.
Yeah,
and he's like, let's go. I'm ready. And so, this isn't my area of expertise, but I was like, man, I don't think this is a great opponent for us. And on top of that, not that it was a crazy favor for the UFC or the promotion, I was like, I don't think we need to do them a favor right here. Like, you need, and 4 weeks is solid, but I was like, you deserve more than 3 or 4 weeks. Like, you need 6 to 8 week camp, and they said they're going to give that to us. Like, when they say jump, we don't need to say how high and go. And, the fighter was arguing with me and fighting. And I even talked to some other fighters. I was like, hey, this guy, the opponent? I'm like, what do you think? And they're like, yeah, I'm not crazy about that one. So I'm like, okay, I'm on to something here. But again, the fighter didn't agree with me. He wanted the fight. He was like, oh, I'm telling you, I'll knock him out in the first round. And I'm like, you might. But if you don't knock him out in the first round, I guarantee up in that altitude, you're going to gas and you're going to get wrestled. And then all of a sudden, you're going to be 0-2 in the UFC. And then your third fight, you're going to be fighting worried. Oh, crap, I can't lose 3 in a row. My back's against the wall. What if you get a bad decision? What if you go into the fight with a pulled hamstring and you're desperate for money again, but you decide to keep it?
Yeah.
So in that moment, luckily, I told the fighter, I was like, just listen to me on this one. I was like, the next one that comes through, you can make the call. If you love the next one and I don't, that's fine. But on this one, just listen to me. We need to skip on this. We'll get another opportunity. It'll be soon. Don't worry. Because they were also worried about sitting on their ass for a while.
Yeah.
Of course, a couple weeks goes by. They give us another offer. We much more favorable opponent goes over there, finishes the guy.
Of course.
So now maybe he would have finished or won that other fight, but myself and other people that know the actual the tactics and the part of actual fighting inside the cage better than I, they weren't high on the first opportunity either. So in that sense, I think I helped tee up the fighter, for the better end game.
That's awesome. Yeah, because sometimes you got to protect them from themselves and the people around them, man. There's so many like scumbags out there that just want something from them, and they just want, they're vultures.
Yeah. And sometimes, unfortunately, you'll get trainers that it feels like they say yes to every matchup that comes through. Because even sometimes I'm like, man, this one seems like a little bit more than we can chew right now. Like there's no rush to jump into this, but the trainer's thirsty to try to get a fighter in the rankings, or the trainer just doesn't care. The trainer wants that payday in 1 or 2 months, whatever it might be. So that's why I'll try to tee it up business wise again. Like I'll go and I'll look at the rankings, or I'll look at the available fighters, and I'll say, okay, we're coming off a win. Now here's 3 other guys that are also coming off wins, and they're in your vicinity of the rankings. I think these fights make business sense. I'll take that to the fighter and the trainer, have them look at that, and them say, oh, out of those 3, we hate this one, love this one, blah, blah. So then I'll take whatever 1 or 2 names that they finally give me after they cross off, and then I'll go to the UFC and I'll say, hey, well, I think this makes business sense, and blah, 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 and see if we can get that matchup. Because I'm not going to magically pick on my own who I think the fighter should go against. I'm not a matchmaker.
Yeah, and you got to trust the coach in that level. And so I guess it's super important for you to have a relationship with the coach too, because you've got to be able to go to the coach with transparency and be like, hey, here's what we got. What do you think? But and be able to say that to him. How long do you think? I have this question. We've got to go to the UFC PI Center a few times, man. It's just a beautiful facility. I don't know how big that thing is, but that campus is insane.
Yeah, they don't mess around.
How long do you one? What kind of advantage do you think it is for a fighter to be in Vegas compared to that? And then 2, how long do you think before most fighters live in Vegas, because the fights are there? They get everything they need at the PI. As a fighter, I feel like that's a huge advantage if I'm there to be able to use the facilities. Like as a manager, do you try to push your people to maybe live in Vegas, at least go train in Vegas for a fight or a camp? And do you think it gives a benefit to them?
I don't push them to live there, but I definitely push them to go out there and utilize all the resources and get a feel for it and see if it's right for them. Okay. Because the resources are endless from A to Z.
Yep.
I mean, from nutrition to assisting with the weight cut to strength and conditioning. And then even there's guys like Forrest Griffin that work there that, you can even talk shop about MMA tactics with him, or even, his experiences, even maybe a little bit in regards to contracts that he dealt with, or his experiences on fight night, whether it be that back room. And then obviously actually training in the exact size cage helps. But it's a very valuable resource. I try to get guys, if the fight's in Vegas, I try to push guys to get out there early and utilize that stuff even just for the physical therapy, or just to get their weight check dialed in. But even if the fighter isn't able to live out there or doesn't want to, I still kind of push them to check in with the staff at the Performance Institute to make sure they're dialed in on diet, dialed in on the other things, the nutrition, the whatever. I mean, sometimes they're not going to game plan for you, but there are different elements that they can assist. If you need to strengthen, X movement, they can kind of come up with some of those plans for you and help your trainer to implement those in camp wherever you might live.
Yeah, I want to know. I brought this up earlier, and I know obviously you probably can't disclose what like got paid or anything with that, but when Kevin was in Vegas for the fight D-Rod and all that went down, he posted a story, his pay dance when he got paid.
Oh yeah.
But how? Because I just remember being there, and I was like, "Holy shit, this is going down." He's fighting D-Rod. There was an altercation with him and Shemaya over clippers, right? I don't know who instigated that, but there was an argument over clippers or beard or something, and then they get into it, right? And anyone that doesn't know Kevin knows Kevin's Kevin. And what you gotta love Kevin or hate Kevin, but Kevin is Kevin at all times, right?
He's not shy. If you start it, he's not gonna
back
stand
down
there and listen. He's gonna continue it. That's for sure.
And he's Kevin, man. Like when you see nice Kevin, that's nice Kevin. He's one of the most giving people. He's one of the most nice people. He has your back, and if you piss him off, he'll get in your like. He is who he is on camera, off camera. It doesn't matter. Like I remember when we were in San Antonio, he was doing an appearance, and there was the UFC card. It was like 2 years ago, and we were in the back, and he was just doing he was hitting mitts, and fighter dropped out. We were in the weight, and then
he was like, "I'm here."
He goes, "I'm ready. I can make weight right now. Give me 30 minutes." And we're like, "You're like, no, Kevin." He was like, "The fuck you mean no? I can do. I'll knock him out." And we're like, "Kevin, you have a fight in like 45 days." You're like, "I'll knock him out and fight in 45 days."
Like,
you're like, "Kev, what if?" And you're like, "Oren, go tell him right now. If they get what? Don't I get an extra 2 hours to make weight?" And but this is the day of weigh-in, so this is Friday.
Some people are just about that life, and some people like him legitimately love it. And if possible, he'd fight every month if he could.
And there was no cameras around. It was literally just. It was his coach. It was him. It was the production. There was no like we weren't there. There was no UFC cameras. There was no UFC fighters. There wasn't no show. There was nobody putting on a thing. I think you walked in and one of the guys was like, "Hey man, so and so, he couldn't make weight. The fight's off."
Yeah,
and
his face perked up. He got all excited.
His little bunny ears went up. He was ready.
Yeah, like you said, there were no cameras. It's not an act.
No.
Like now you saw that little piece, and you've been around him a good amount as well, but. Imagine all the phone calls that I get, or like, "Hey, what about this? What about that?" And it's like, never ending.
Yeah, I remember he called me one time. He's like, "Hey, what do you think about this fight?" And I'm like, "Kev, like it doesn't matter what I think or anyone thinks. I already know what you're thinking. It's like you want to fight it." But he's like, I go, "But you have a fight in like 2 weeks." He's like, "Yeah, but I can fight now." Remember who was the fight that he got all up in arms about? It was right before the Chiesa fight. It was Michael Chiesa, or he got. There was like 2 weeks before he got up in arms because someone fell out. And he's like, "Let me fight on this card and then fight in 2 weeks."
There's been so many times I can't even remember. And some of those we've even reached out, and the UFC was like, "Man, I love you, but
you can't do that.
We're not going to pull you from a co-main event." And blah.
But he would, and for any fighter out there or like managers, like that's why you have to have your fighter be who they are, one, but put themselves out there. And like the Chimaev situation, we talk about it. Was crazy. So Chimaev was supposed to fight Diaz.
Yep.
D-Rod was fighting Kevin, and then it was Tony Ferguson was fighting.
I want to say
I can't remember.
I'm saying it wrong, but like Ying Lang.
Yes, and then they had an issue at the press conference. Yeah, sorry, Cozy Bros. Loud Ties.
What is his name?
I don't remember. Loud Ties. They had at the
look it up.
Press conference. Yeah, they had an issue at the press conference.
Yeah, backstage they got into it. And and I even warned the UFC PR team ahead of time because I asked them about the press conference stage even before that. I was like, "Hey, are Kevin and Chimaev on the same side of the stage for the press conference?" And they're like, "Yeah, they actually are. Why?" And I was like, "Oh, they got some history." I was like, "I know even though they're not opponents, I was like, things are going to be said at some point." And I was like, "You should have them on different sides of the stage." So they had that ready to go. But then backstage before it all went down, Chimaev came back there, got in his space. And I think Kevin even said like, "Hey man, get out of my space." And Chimaev, wasn't about that and got in his face and said something. And then, just when it starts, it's rolling. Or even if you say the wrong thing or you I don't even know who touched who first, but yeah, it obviously it went down.
You can't like these guys are fighters. Like I don't understand. Like especially with fans or people in the street, I'm like, man, what are you talking about? You're talking reckless. Like you are a amateur novice at best. You're like a casual, if you will, and you're trash talking to the UFC fighter or an opponent. It's like what the hell's the matter with you? Yeah. Like why would you do that? But then what's crazy about that is then Chimaev ends up missing weight by a disrespectful amount. 8 pounds.
8 pounds, yep.
And the whole card falls apart because I think Diaz said he's not taking a fight on that.
Diaz had one more fight left on his UFC deal, and he wanted out of his deal to begin with. And, that was kind of like a spite booking. They set him up with the monster. They're like, oh, you want out of your deal? Fine, we're gonna send you off packing, probably on a loss. But when Chimaev missed weight, that gave Diaz had a massive leg to stand on. He was like, his team had told me, we signed a contract for 170 pounds. So you either give us somebody at 170 pounds or we're not fighting. And they held on that ground pretty firm. And then that's where it came into play. The UFC started thinking like, well, first of all, what always happens, like you mentioned, if anything pops up, it's always called Big Mouth.
Yeah.
Or, Kevin's raising his hand, even if they aren't calling Big Mouth.
Yeah.
So they were like, oh, we got Kevin Holland on this card. He's down for whatever. And on top of that, oh my God, they just had beef 12 hours ago, 24 hours ago, whatever it was. And so, yeah, they contacted us early in the morning when they knew that Chimaev was going to miss and that Diaz wasn't going to be down to take it. They called us to see if we would be interested. And then after that, they started realizing, oh, we have all these other little chess pieces that we can actually remake Tony Ferguson versus this guy and, D-Rod versus that one and blah, 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 and change these 3 fights. The interesting thing about all that and the real story that really nobody knows, or a key moment that I thought we could have had was, so obviously there was 3 fights in that, 6 fighters. Take away one fighter, Chimaev, because he has no leverage because he's the asshole that missed weight by 8 pounds. So there's 5 fighters that on less than 24 hours notice, their bouts are being changed.
And weights too, because not all those guys were saying weight.
A couple of them, I think there was like 1 or 2 catch weights, and I think it was even before some of them weighed in. So one guy like maybe stopped cutting a little bit. Yeah. But either way, the 5 fighters together, we could have, for the first time to my knowledge, had a little bit of collective bargaining together. So I tried to contact the other fighters' managers or something, even the fighters that I knew, and I tried to get everybody to let's talk. Let's maybe not get in a room. I wasn't even there yet, honestly, but let's all talk. Like we have a moment here. Like if these 5 fighters, if we don't agree to this, they just lost basically 3 of their 5 main fights on the main card. It might have even been 1, 2, 3. I was like, if we could all take a stand together, if we all hold our ground, or if we all say, nah, we're not doing this, UFC's going to get scared and they're going to pay the piper. Because you crunch the numbers, the UFC sells a pay-per-view, whatever it is, $60, $70 these days. Now, I know way back in the day, they'd do a fit, I believe. I don't know. I believe back in the day it was a 50-50 split with the cable provider, like the DirecTV for the pay-per-view. Now that it might be a better split these days, and then obviously with ESPN it's different. But we also know ballpark pay-per-view sales. We know that there's 350,000 to 600,000-700,000 pay-per-views, depending on who's the card, how hot, etc. So if you take a median of that, and then you take this, just even call it the $60 per pay-per-view, and then I cut that in half. I had a little calculation here. This is about how much the UFC is going to make just off the pay-per-view. So, and that's a large number. And I'm like, God forbid they pay $5 million more out of pocket for these 5 fighters. Like, they're still going to do fine. They're still going to crush it. But, one fighter went and did a deal. One fighter and his manager did a deal real super early in the morning. Another guy, he's not on, in my opinion, he's not on the fight of the, he's a house manager.
Yeah.
He's not on the side of the fighters and just, didn't get involved in the communication. There was another manager that I spoke with for a couple hours that day on and off. I'm like, hey, what's going on with your bout? This is happening with mine. And I'm not doing a deal right now. I talked to him an hour ago, but I'm waiting. But the moral of the story is I couldn't get the 5 groups together to all just take a stand and be like, no, we're not fighting.
So now UFC's like, fuck that guy.
And so one of them did a deal super right away, early in the morning. And there was one other one that I know waited, maybe not waited, but didn't get their deal done till maybe 2 or 3-ish. And then the one guy that didn't respond, which I'm guessing they did a deal fairly early in the morning just to be a yes man to the UFC. But we didn't get our deal done until like 7, 8 p.m. that evening.
Yeah, after
after
Dana announced it.
After they announced it and after the mock weigh-in. So Kevin faced off, walked across stage. Our deal wasn't even done yet.
Yeah. So I remember I was texting you, I think at the time, or Kevin. Like literally was texting one of y'all.
Yep.
And then I see, fight announcement. And Dana's like, we got exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Diaz
they wanted to fire it up on ESPN. They're, Dana's going to hype this up. It's going to be huge. They're going to say how much of a gangster you are, blah, blah. But, here's where having a manager helps a little bit. There's some of these lines, or call them tactics, that the UFC says every once in a while. Well, guess what? They forget I've heard that line before.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you hear that for the first time, if you're a fighter and you hear Dana's going to go on SportsCenter and say how much of a gangster you are and all that, yeah, it sounds great and it is cool. But at the end of the day, well, that didn't make you any money. It really, and on top of that, it probably didn't get you any more social media followers either. It got your name out there a little bit, but that didn't move the needle for the fighter.
Do you think they have to go capitalize on that? I feel that there's a lot of opportunities for that fighters don't capitalize on that, right? Like they should capitalize on that, because when Dana goes out there, you should go on there and immediately post, like you said, there should be active on your page and go to these events, because I mean, look, at the end of the day, I'm not saying you do an attaboy every time, because eventually an attaboy is supposed to get you an attaboy, right? Yeah. But if you do an attaboy for the UFC, Dana White just seems like he is a gangster, right? Obviously, what they've done is incredible, but if he's like, he seems like a dude that I don't think he gets offended. I try to keep the same stance. Like, people get offended. They're a business too, and they're trying to profit. I think they understand that the fighters and the managers are a business too, so they don't get offended with the negotiations. They might get pissed off in the middle of it, but it seems like they can appreciate you trying to stick up for your fighters because they're trying to stick up for their organization. But I also too is like, some of these fighters, I've seen Dana go on there, not in this scenario, and Dana's like, oh, this guy's a badass, and look for this guy. And I'll go look them up, right? Like, who's that guy? And then I don't see anything on their social media, like you said. And I'm like, dude, you should be capitalizing on Dana, because if Dana speaks your name, you're going to be Googled. People are going to look you up. You're going to want to be active. Share that story. Collabs, whatever you can to capitalize.
You need to utilize that content and add some of your own flair or some of your other content to that as well, because that's a small key moment that you can get your name out there more. And then turn those key moments into more followers, which eventually is going to turn into more sponsors and bigger sponsors. Now that's if you want to maximize your earning potential. I mean, some guys, I guess it's just, hey, just pay me what I'm getting paid to get punched in the face. But in some other managers, they'll flat out tell the fighter, like, hey, I only do your fight contract. Yeah, I don't do any of the other stuff. Like I've heard a manager has told a fighter, like, it's not worth my time to chase those marketing and sponsorship deals. So to me, that manager just told the fighter, like, I only want to make money when you go in there and get punched in the face. Yeah, that's all I care about. I don't care about to hustle and try to get you as much money as you can or to grow your brand. Like, nah, let me just sit back and wait for the phone to ring or wait for the email to come in. Like, he or she probably isn't being proactive trying to figure out what's the matchup that maybe makes business sense, talking with the trainer. It's unfortunately, there's no barrier of entry to be an MMA manager. Yeah. Like, when I was working in the NFL world, I was a licensed agent through the Players Association. Wow. You have to, not only do you have to take a test, you have to pay a fee ahead of time to take a test. If you pass the test, which only 50% of people pass the test, then you have to pay another yearly fee to the league. And on top of that, you have to hold a special insurance. But even before all that, you have to get approved. It's almost like a good old boys club. You have to be approved to even be allowed to pay to take the test. But now there's ways that you could get approved, but
it's harder.
Yeah, some of it you have to have X years in marketing, or you have to have a master's degree, some type of extended education. Like the other leagues, they have that barrier of entry with the requirements ahead of time, and then even passing their test. But their test is just understanding, at least in the NFL, understanding the collective bargaining agreement, which is like, there's 2 different books that are like at least 600 pages.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's a lot of repetitive legal writing, but when you get past the legal fluff, there is some interesting stuff there. And the Players Association does take great care of the players in NFL, and I'm sure the other leagues, I haven't read those, and I don't know. but it takes care of the players while they're active, and then afterwards with their pensions and the different benefits and the different insurance. The NFL, it's a massive business. There's a reason that Roger Goodell makes that bonkers salary.
Yeah. Look at the business he runs.
Yeah, I mean they're moving the needle all over the place on their TV deals, on their distribution, the merchandise. There's just so many different line items where they kill it.
But I feel like, I mean, I don't know Roger Goodell or know Dana White, but I feel like I would much rather deal with Dana White than Roger, because I feel like Dana, he has an ego, because you have to have an ego at that level. We all have egos, but I think he really does care for the fighters in a degree, right? Like I know he gets a lot of hate, but they should pay more. It's tough because they're trying to run a business. But I feel like they do take care of fighters and they do market them and they brand them. And look, I mean, but what a gangster move, bro. Like, he goes on TV and says, this is a fight. You got Big Mouth who answers the call. He's fighting on short notice to catch weight, and the fight's not signed yet. So it kind of puts some pressure on you to be like.
Sometimes that might happen. They put it out there, and that way if something happens and you don't take the fight or you can't negotiate terms, then all of a sudden the fans are like, oh, you backed out, blah, blah. But it goes both ways, and I've had that happen numerous times where they leak it to some media or they even announce it on one of their sources. But sometimes it could make the fighter look bad if they don't ultimately take the fight, per the fan's opinion, that is. But then other times it's like, y'all already put this out there.
Better pay.
Y'all need the fight to happen now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll do it, but again, we want X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. I love that. And I know we don't have much time, but for people out there, if you want to get into the sports world or if you're a fighter, like, what's kind of some of the best pieces of advice? Okay, so like me, let's say I want to become an agent, right? What are some things I should do if I want to become an agent? And then if I'm a fighter and I'm looking for an agent, like, what are some things I can do or look for?
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to get in the sports world in any sport, or you want to be a manager, what I suggest is getting somebody that's kind of early in their career. In fighting, it's gonna, I'm gonna say get somebody that's early in their pro career, maybe even just one or two pro fights. Find a fighter that's local to you, because the reality is that local fighter, he's gonna be fighting on the local scene. A show in New York isn't gonna fly a kid from Dallas out to sell 0 tickets and pay him, pay that money for him to compete, because there's a million kids based in that region that they can get. But for the new coming manager or somebody who wants to crack in, get that local fighter, talk with the local promotions, talk with his coach and trainer and his team, get him matched up, with another guy that only has 1 or 2 fights. Make sure that it's a fair fight, the style fight that aligns good with what your guy is skilled at or what he needs to avoid, and then run around, hustle some local sponsors. There's no reason, even if your fight isn't televised, there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to go and get, 4 or 5 sponsors at anywhere from $250 to $1,000 a pop.
Yeah.
If you can't bang down some doors, make some calls, have local businesses that you're connected to, if you can't call around and help a guy secure $1,000 of $2,000 of, you can call it one of 2 things. It could either be sponsorship or donor. The reality is what I fetch for my clients is I'm fetching sponsors that need impressions and that need exposure. Now, some people, when they hear sponsor, they just think a donor, somebody that's just going to give you money and doesn't even care if they get their company seen, or doesn't even, doesn't care if you have a logo on the shorts or a shout out. But that early in the stage, if you can't run around and hustle either a sponsor or a donor, long term, you're going to have some issues. But if you do that with the one fighter, then hopefully slowly he gets to 4 or 5 fights, and then maybe he gets on one of these shows where he's on UFC Fight Pass.
Yep.
Now all of a sudden you have 1 million impressions. Now donors are nice, don't get me wrong, but now you don't rely on those donors. Now you can go around. Now you can go call. It's going to be hard because it's a big dog company, but you can try and call the Bass Pro Shops, the G Fuel Energy Drink, the Manscaped. Obviously this is old, but the Tap Out.
Yeah.
Early on, when I first got into it, everybody called Tap Out and Training Mask. And yeah, Tap Out and Training Mask, they sponsored a lot of guys, but they're kind of doing the industry standard, or they know, if I can't get you, I can probably go get the other guy for $1,000, $2,000, whatever the number is. But that's where I was trying to call. I was thinking bigger picture for the athlete and myself. I'm like, I'm going to go call Bass Pro Shops. My guy's outdoors. He's into hunting and fishing. I'm going to call them and tell them, hey, this guy's about to be on Fox, and Fox fights in the past have had 3 million viewers, blah, blah, blah. I can slap your logo on the shorts. We can go do a hunt and video blog it and put it on YouTube. And then, we can also do some social media content for you with the hunt. Following the fight, we'll take pictures. We'll get pictures from the fight that have your logo, and obviously we'll tag y'all, and we'll have some key messaging if you're doing a buy one, get one, or if you want to give, a special discount. Use code Jim Miller online at Bass Pro Shops and get 10% off. We'll try to find a way that y'all can relate this ROI on that investment and drive some traffic. But, I was trying to fish after those, on that Bass Pro Shops fish. Ironic.
Yeah, I'm trying to fish. Yeah,
But, I was trying to fish.
There. Shout out Bass Pro Shop fishing.
Try to fish some outside of the box, some bigger picture stuff like that. And even, another example, body armor. I was the first person in combat sports to do a deal with body armor, and that was on Errol Spence. And then like a year later, the UFC ends up doing a league-wide deal with them.
Awesome.
But those type of deals, that's going to get the fighter compensated. But on top of the compensation, if Body Armor's putting this guy in a magazine ad, or maybe even using
exposure,
TV commercial, or even if their Body Armor's posting them on their page with however many followers they have, that's a company that at the time or at some point is partially owned by Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
So that's probably a good company to align yourself with.
Exactly.
So sometimes it might not even be about the money. It might be, hey, we can get a little bit of money, but the exposure or the opportunity is going to help. When Johnny Hendricks and I were talking to Reebok, we'd been talking for a little bit, but when we went into their office, one of the first things they said to us out of nowhere, they were like, man, Bass Pro Shops, that's big. How the hell did y'all get that? It them seeing Bass Pro on Johnny Hendricks shorts
gave credibility.
It made their ad spend or their interest in him become even easier for their marketing team to sign off. So that's when I started really kind of valuing that. Like, okay, I'm not going to nickel and dime these guys over X amount of thousands of dollars. Like, yeah, we want the right dollar amount for the impressions that we're given, but if we're off a little bit, we can make up for it. It helps.
Well, sometimes too, the relationships can be worth more than the one-time transaction too, because you got people that can get you, that can introduce you to people that and can get more fans and everything else. Now, as a fighter, if you're coming up, obviously we talked a lot about how important it is to have a manager, but what should a fighter do when picking a manager, especially up and coming? Because you should probably have it before you get in the pros, right? Ideally, or get close. But what should you do as a fighter to really look for a manager? Yeah,
I think early on, at the very beginning, for maybe 1, 2, 3 fights even, you might not even need a manager. Now, if you find one that you feel confident in and they are doing stuff outside of the cage for you, sure, that's good time to have a manager. But early on, it's okay to coordinate those fights with your trainer. Obviously you need to be hustling yourself. You or your trainer needs to have a relationship with those promotions and talk to the numerous shows in your area. But after that, I think guys should don't just go with the manager that you see a couple of your teammates have. And you just think like, oh, this guy's got Kevin Holland and Renato Moicano and Terrence McKinney and whoever else. I'm going to go with him just because. It might not be a right fit for you. You need to talk to numerous managers, learn about the space, hear what they're offering, hear what their short-term and long-term plan is for you, and find out, what type of marketing companies are you in contact with? I'm on top of fighting. I'm also into skateboarding. Are you interested in chasing deals for me in the skateboarding world? Or, hey, I'm a guy that I like to lift. Also, I'm not, I like to feel physical. I mean, obviously they're all in crazy shape, but some guys are hardcore, and he's like, I spend a lot of money on supplements. Can you help maybe get me a supplement sponsor, or can you get me free supplements? I mean, just these small things. Just because somebody has 100 fighters doesn't mean that they're going to be the right guy for you. And sometimes, in my opinion, too many fighters can end up being a conflict of interest.
Bog you down.
What if, how are you going to sign up on the regional scene? How are you going to sign up your own fighters to fight each other? Because we're supposed to be
a team,
setting somebody up, not setting them up, but we're supposed to be trying to align you with fights that we feel you're going to win. Now, if I rep both sides of that fight, how am I doing that if I know one of my guys is going to lose?
And you're setting your fighter back.
Yeah. So I think some people just don't even care, and they're like, let me throw these guys to the wolves. I don't care who they fight. I don't even care if it's my own guy. Let's see who wins and who can get up there. But, you know, I'm trying to align with guys that I think can make money outside of the cage.
Yeah.
And we'll kind of tag team and listen on the growth of what we can do on social. And then obviously guys that are just long term, you know, we're not in it for that one transaction, like you said.
Yeah.
You know, because each fight, you know, needs to be looked at that too. It's just, you know, it's a business.
Yeah. So look, guys, if you are a fighter and you're looking for a manager, Oren, Hodak, KO Reps, make sure you go find KO Reps. Look, if you want to sponsor, if you want to get into the fight game, if you're interested in the fight game on being a sponsor, it can open the world for you. We do it a lot. But if you have a favorite and he reps some of the biggest names out there, is reach out to KO Reps or Oren, and you can sponsor a fighter, donate, collab, an event, like content. It's just not just sponsored to put your fight there. Look, you can if you want to do an appearance at your work, a speaker, there's all kinds of stuff they can do. But you can reach out to one of those fighters, reach out to Oren. He'll get you in contact to be able to pull off whatever you need to do. But if you also want a manager, reach out to Oren. Oren, thank you for your time, man. Thank you for the insights. We appreciate it.
Good times. Thanks for having me.